might be one of the most difficult videos to try and break down or explain, but it is a video on why West Ham long-term need to look at a better left-back than Aaron Cresswell, which it sounds awful. Like, I've got to be honest, I don't even like really saying it, to be honest, but there is something to be said about Aaron Cresswell's effectiveness. And just in terms of what we saw on Sunday with Saïd Benrahma coming into the side and missing Pablo Fornals, I think we're realising that there's something amiss in terms of West Ham having to use particularly Pablo Fornals in that way defensively to protect Cresswell. But I do want to get into this video why Cresswell has been so good this season and why probably a lot of credit has got to be given to both him and David Moyes in utilising him a lot more effectively. If we're looking at Cresswell, and I'm trying to make a comparison here with some of the best left-backs in the league, or certainly what I've seen so far this season, Robertson, Tierney, Targett, Shaw and Cresswell I've grouped in terms of looking at their effectiveness. And in terms of shot creating actions, Cresswell is up there. In terms of going forward, Cresswell competes with them a lot more effectively, which is interesting because you'd never quite assume that, particularly with players in there like Tierney. Matt Targett has made the most tackles in his own defensive third. You know, there are things, and we'll get onto the defensive attributes, but certainly going forward, there is no debate that Aaron Cresswell is fantastic. The quality in terms of him setting up chances, in terms of his pass completion as well, is massively up there. But what I will say is I think we are enabling him within this side, particularly when we go to a back three and play with the wing backs, to get forward. And I think that's been, to Moyes' credit, a way of getting the most out of Cresswell, crosses into the box, creating chances and utilising the clear ability that he has. Now, I'm not saying that he's a better player than Shaw. I think Shaw, in terms of statistics, is the most well-rounded of all of the players that I've just mentioned. Robertson's not had a great season, but again, going forward, is lightning and gets more crosses into the box than anybody else. Targett, probably better defensively than some of these players, or at least attempting to make a lot more tackles. And Tierney is somewhere between the two, which surprised me, to be honest, because I think he's probably, you look at him at Arsenal, their most influential player. Now, let's try and break this down a little bit more and talk about the left-hand side. And I've tried to make a comparison with some of the players that these left-backs have in front of them and the work rate that they do. Now, interestingly, they're on the higher echelon of decent left-sided players. So it's not to discredit Pablo Fornals. In fact, probably give him a little bit more credit than he gets already. Robertson's got Mane in front of him typically. Smith Rowe's in front of Tierney at the minute. Jack Grealish on the left for Aston Villa. Rashford on the left for Manchester United. And of course, Pablo Fornals on the left-hand side for West Ham. Pablo Fornals' impact is much more impressive defensively than all of those players I've just mentioned. And I don't think it's a massive surprise. I think Grealish, again, relinquished of a lot of duties. Mane works hard, but again, is not really where Liverpool want him at times. Smith Rowe, more of a number 10. So Rashford, again, a similar type of player. Fornals is demonstrating attributes and qualities that you don't necessarily associate with a number 10. Now, on this left-hand side, a couple of statistics I want to throw at you. He makes 2 blocks per 90, which is over double the amount of the next highest, which is Sadio Mane. That's ridiculously impressive. 1.1 interceptions per 90 as well. Again, the highest out of those group of players I've just mentioned. And when you combine the tackles and the interceptions together, it's 2.3, which is, again, the highest of all the players that I've mentioned. So, interestingly enough, whilst Cresswell is one of the better in an attacking sense, it's not really giving you the full scope in terms of the work that left-hand sided player has to do. And I think we saw, not even in terms of pressures, because Saïd Benrahma's pressures are up there with Pablo Fornals', slightly less successful, but how important and how small a margin there is on that left-hand side for West Ham to make any mistakes or not protect Cresswell. Because without them, Cresswell becomes massively isolated. And I've tried to understand why that is. Part of it's to do with pressures. He's the lowest on that list, or one of the lowest in terms of winning pressures successfully. That's got to be something that's been said. I think we saw a lot of that last season, and I'm sure if people sat there and pulled up stats from 1920, we would see that. When he's going to try and pressure the ball, he's not winning it enough. And I know it seems that we're talking margin, we're talking 10% per 90s in here. But the reality is, that's the difference between stopping that cross getting in on Sunday. That's the error. That's how small a margin of error is in the Premier League. And for West Ham, who are now competing for Champions League, or at least in and around those spaces. So that's why I think it is more important than possibly what the stats say. But I've literally pulled I've got a poll of players, left-hand sided players, left backs, and tried to analyse what's going wrong. Not for Cresswell because he's had a great season, but what is it about Cresswell that means we've got to go and get a long-term left back that is a little bit stronger? And it's to do with the tackles. And I realised this when you compared it to what Vladimir Coufal does. If you break it down even further in terms of the 90 minutes, actually Aaron Cresswell wins more of the ball in pressures than Vladimir Coufal. I think that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how's he winning it in pressures when I've just said Cresswell is one of the worst in that left back list or the top left back list? But the reality is Coufal makes a lot more tackles than Aaron Cresswell and wins the ball a hell of a lot more than Cresswell. And what you see in terms of his offensive stats, gets into the final third a lot more as well, and the middle third, and progresses the ball a lot better. So the stats I've got here, Coufal winning the possession, 3.3 per game. Compare that to Cresswell, or at least in terms of the tackles, 1.85. It's nearly, I'm not saying it's nearly double, but 1.53, double, yeah? So Coufal is when he's going to go and win that ball, and when he's forget the pressure element of it, because he's still going out there and at times being beaten, but when he's making tackles, he's winning them, he's recovering the ball much more effectively than Cresswell is. So it isn't about Cresswell's work rate, and it isn't about... he's been protected this season anyway for me. He's been a lot more conservative. I think it's a strategy from David Moyes, whether he's left centre-back or whether... we've not really seen it, or whether he's left back and he's been a bit more conservative. We're not really seeing him go as far. And I think the reason for that is if Cresswell gets found out or he's pressed too high, he's unlikely to win the ball in the same way that Coufal with. And possibly now we're looking at it one-on-one. Who's better? It's got to be Vladimir Coufal. And I think as well what I've pulled up here, Coufal is winning those tackles 2.05 times per 90. And Cresswell, I think, is in the low ones. So almost double. So you can't... I know that this is a massively convoluted video as to... I'm trying to get to the point. But the reality is we have one side of the defence that's strong, that West Ham fans have got a lot of trust in. Coufal is a lot more competent than me. But the key element of this is when he's going out to tackle, he's winning it, he's recovering it, it sets West Ham off, and he's doing it a lot more than Aaron Cresswell is. And maybe if we saw Cresswell in a more conventional role that he'd played previously, last season as a more conventional left back, maybe a lot of these stats would have been shown up. And possibly, yeah, I mean, in an attacking sense, maybe he's still contributing a lot more, and maybe he's still up there. But the truth of the matter is, defensively, there's that problem. There's that problem that West Ham are trying to cover by using Pablo Fornals, who is the most effective of those left-hand-sided attacking players that I've mentioned for the top teams as well. And that's being used to protect Cresswell a fair bit. And it's not to say that, Pablo Fornals is the best at it. Pressures, he's not that successful. He's not as successful as some of those other players, but he's attempting a lot more. He's blocking a lot more. He's winning and intercepting the ball. He's been asked to do a job that really left-hand sided players shouldn't be asked to do. And I know it sounds harsh because Jared Bowen does exactly the same on the right-hand side. But if we're all honest with ourselves, when Jared Bowen recovers the ball, Coufal is getting forward a lot more. Equally, when Coufal's winning the ball, Jared Bowen's got an opportunity to get forward a lot more. And I wonder, I don't believe Fornals is an effective left-sided player anyway. I've always thought he was a number 10. But if you've got a player on that left-hand side that's winning the ball when he's going out to pressure it, and he's recovering it, and West Ham can get forward a lot quicker, it's better defensively because teams aren't getting crosses into the box. It isn't a constant thorn in our side. But also going forward, you've got double avenues there, and I'm sure people could break it down. The switch pass will be on, transitions will be a lot effective. It's difficult for teams to deal, with an attack that can push both fullbacks forward. We know this. We've seen this in the Premier League for years and years and years. So whilst you absolutely have to give Aaron Cresswell credit for this season going forward, you've got to probably give a fair whack of credit to David Moyes for recognising the weakness and really shining a bit of a spotlight and giving him the opportunity to use his quality going forward, or at least delivery-wise. But is that sustainable long-term in terms of where West Ham want to be? Do we want to be a team, as well as we've done, that we work as a unit this year? And I think that's what Moyes has realised. And people don't like him subs, and I get it, and I'm kind of a bit on the subs train. Sometimes he needs to make them more proactively. But he is a good coach. He is a good manager. And he's doing what he needs to do with his side, and the side are buying into it. But long term, for me as well, when you look at his time at Everton, Seamus Coleman, Leighton Baines, players that could really get forward, good defensively as well. That's really what he wants. He wants West Ham. West Ham will be a lot more expansive with a player that is winning the ball a lot more effectively, and we're not as weak. Because genuinely speaking, when you look at West Ham defensively, we don't get pulled apart too often. We did on Sunday at times, and they played through the middle, but teams find it hard to play through us because we're so well organised. And the right-hand side is never really a problem because Coufal's so good at winning the ball. So Cresswell is the weak link, which is horrible to say. And I don't like saying it because he's had a great season. And there's an argument that he should be in the England squad. And if he plays left-sided centre-back, still there's something to be said. Aerially, wins a fair bit. You know, people always level that he's not tall enough, which 5'8" for a centre-back really isn't. But he's still winning it. So that's the point I'm trying to make. I think long-term West Ham have got to go and address that left-back side. And it's easy us sitting here now because we definitely need a striker. That's the first one we've got to chalk off the list. But I think the season after next, if we don't bring in a centre midfielder, if we don't bring in a left-back, if we don't bring in a goalkeeper, these problems will arise very, very quickly. Quicker than I think David Moyes will be able to manage. And there's no guarantee as well that who he gets in is going to be a suitable replacement. I would personally keep having Cresswell. There's no need to get rid of him. I'm not suggesting that for 1 minute. Johnson's coming through, more of a right back for me. Would like to see him start to transition more to his natural side. But I think having a player with the attributes that can develop into the league, particularly this summer, in preparation for possibly a decline from Cresswell because he's getting older, but still having him in the squad for the experience and the undoubted quality he's got in set pieces, is the way for West Ham to manage that left-back situation. So it's going to be an interesting summer. I hope people aren't too upset with me digging out Cresswell. I don't like doing it either. I really, really don't. But I did want to do some research into it because I thought, what is the problem with Cresswell? I can't. It's not as simple as going, well, he's not quick enough. Or, you know, there's got to be something technically about him, and it might be because he's lost a bit of pace, possibly from when we first brought him in from Ipswich, maybe. But I just wanted to get the real crux of the argument here and understand why people, particularly even me included, think that why there's such a big imbalance between the right and the left-hand side. But thank you for joining me. Like the video, subscribe to the West Ham Way if you're new, and let me know your thoughts on Cresswell. Let me know as well, do you want a video on the centre midfielders? What type of centre midfielder do West Ham need to bring in? What type of striker do West Ham need to bring in? And then we can sort of chew the fat over that one as well. So until next time, everybody, take care.